Today we're joined by Annette, partner at Compass Marketing, who will be speaking about customer-centric marketing and why understanding your customer is essential for success. Annette and the team at Compass Marketing leverage their decades of Fortune 50 business experience to develop actionable plans to grow their clients' business by identifying, evaluating, and developing new categories and products with a particular focus on the health and wellness sector. Clients of theirs have included King Arthur Flour, America's Test Kitchen, Zarbee's Naturals, Well Pet, among many others. And Annette is a creative and committed brand builder with over 20 years of experience, having worked for a wide range of industries from oral care to personal care to footwear at companies like Boston Consulting Group, Procter & Gamble, Gillette, and the Stride Rite Corporation. Since founding Compass Marketing a decade ago, Annette has had the opportunity to help brands of all sizes, from developing a new pipeline for multi-billion-dollar companies like Keurig to providing the launch strategy for former startups like the Corrigan Wine System. On a personal note, Annette is an avid snowboarder, mother of 3 rambunctious boys, loves baking, and speaks German fluently. She is thrilled to be sharing her passion for marketing today, and in particular, the all-important first step of defining who your customer is. Annette, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been such a wonderful collaborator in the food ecosystem these past couple of years. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, Carol, and the entire Branch Food team for allowing me to speak today on a topic that I am actually quite passionate about. And I'm sure you'll see as we start getting into just the discussion how passionate I am, and I hope you will be too, because as Lauren had mentioned, this is truly, understanding that consumer is truly one of those first steps, and I think you'll see why and will be as committed as I am to that by the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let's hop into the deck. As Lauren had mentioned, I am a partner at Compass Marketing. We are a marketing strategy innovation agency that's focused on delivering smart strategies for real growth. And what that really means is that we help our clients figure out how to often reach very aggressive growth targets, whether or not that's looking at how they're positioning, how to best enter potentially new markets, figuring out what is that innovation pipeline, and many more. So our clients often come to us as well because we are insightful. Our basis is more on the consumer insight-driven marketing, so we are very much evidence-based. We make sure that we also provide, again, our expertise and our best-in-class approach that's right-sized for each and every one of the businesses relative to your category and obviously relative to what you can actually access and be able to then realize. And last but not least, that actionability. And I think that's also probably one of the most important aspects because everybody wants to clearly understand not just their strategy, but how am I truly going to be getting there? And how we do that is by collaborating with our clients and making sure that they are involved with the process so that they truly understand not just what then the next steps are another year or two, but what the next step is for the next day. With that having been said, let me introduce you to the partners. In case you are wondering who I am the second one from the right. And to give you an idea of why our clients often come to us in regards to what we're looking at, it really can go into kind of 4 buckets. So we are often looking at opportunity areas, so clients who are looking at a better understanding of certain consumer market segment, understanding how they can better succeed in a certain area, or much like the topic that I'm discussing today, better understanding who your consumer is. We also do a lot of ideation and innovation, so working with our clients to create that new product pipeline through consumer insights and concept development. We conduct our own market research, that's qualitative and quantitative in-house. So we provide that turnkey approach to our clients. And then also branding strategy, that's so important at every step of the marketing process. So better understanding your branding positioning or often figuring out what's wrong, what's not working, helping our clients extend into other areas or getting those fundamentals of their brand charters in place before they then move on to creating the brand expression. And then last but not least, the strategic planning. So working with our clients, often in workshops, such as our brand visioning workshop, helping them figure out where to take the organization overall and making sure that the functions are aligned, as well as more longer term planning such as roadmap development, and also the more short term marketing plan and go to market strategy. As I'd mentioned earlier, we work with a variety of different types of clients, from the smaller startups all the way to the multi-billion-dollar companies. But one thing that they all have in common is that desire to grow. And we've also very much focused on consumers, our clients are very much interested in that health and wellness sector. And that can be focused on the food and beverage side, so what you're actually putting into your body. It can be relative to what you're putting onto your body, i.e. topicals, or how it's impacting your environment. All three obviously very much growing areas, especially nowadays during the COVID time period. So without further ado, let's get into our topic for today, consumer-centric marketing. I thought it might be a little humorous if we start out with a cartoon, especially on a Friday. And while some of you may laugh, some of you may actually relate to this visual. And I think it's one that we often need to keep in the back of our minds, because many of us may have been in exactly this situation. So this is where we suddenly realize that we have had target creep, and we are looking at a much broader target than we ever started out with. And what this presentation or discussion is going to be really focused on is why it is so very valuable to have a clear idea of who your target is and how to best refine that target. To start that discussion, let's talk again about why it is so important to have a clear idea of who your target is. And, you know, this is more the standard marketing mix, but even touching on those different, 4 Ps, and there are many more, we'll start highlighting why it's so important to understand who your target is. Starting off with the price. How are you going to price that product if you don't know how your target is going to value your offering? Or place. Where will your target look for your offering? Or even where will they look for information if you don't have a clear idea of who your target is, you don't know where to go? Looking at promotion, how are you going to make the best use of your dollars so that you can reach your target, so that you can also meet your financial objectives? And then last but not least, the product development. Think about what are the must-haves for that product. You can't do that, you can't figure that out unless you have a clear idea of who your target market is. Now, sometimes we have a mixed notion of what is truly understanding kind of who your target consumer is. And let me take you through a quick example. So pretend that I have my idea is basically a powdered beverage. The issue here is that you need to figure out who is your who, because in the end, each who is different. And you're going to want to talk to that person in a different way. You could have a brown powdered beverage and speak to those on the bodybuilding or fitness side. Well, in that case, your functional benefits would be looking very much at strength, energy, and on the emotional side, how am I going to support those efforts? You could also look at, on a different side, weight loss. So here, you would emphasize on the functional side, how are you going to help in your messaging, help that target hit their weight loss goals? Or on the emotional side, again, supporting efforts, but maybe it makes it feel more like a treat. And we can go down the examples, and you can see how each one is slightly different, and how each one would very much be impacted by how you're going to communicate it, where you're going to be even placing that messaging, dependent on who you decide your target audience is. In essence, it can be kind of captured in this very simple Venn diagram of one circle being what your consumers want, the other what competition offers, and the other your idea. If you don't have that circle what consumers want, i.e. you don't know who your consumer is, you will not be able to figure out what that sweet spot is. And that sweet spot is what is unique about your offering that the consumer actually wants. You don't want to highlight those areas that the competition is already offering. And to drive it all home and to kind of summarize the point of, again, why understanding who your consumer is and refining that is so important. Starting off with messaging effectiveness, okay? So if you want to appeal to your target most deeply and not have a generic message, you truly need to understand who that audience is. It also helps you, obviously, on the efficiency standpoint. So where are you going to put your marketing dollars to make sure that your target gets that message? Because we especially know that as we're starting out with a new idea, every dollar counts, and you want to make sure that it's used as efficiently as possible. And thirdly, authenticity. By understanding your consumer, you can then make sure that your brand is acting, talking, and behaving the way that your consumer would also expect it to. And then we have, of course, inspiration. So as your product hopefully succeeds, by understanding who your consumer is, you can then easily identify new opportunities of where to take your brand. So I hope with this, you've gotten a clear idea, first of all, of what consumer-centric marketing is, and that you agree how important it is. Now, I want to make sure that you realize that you're not handcuffed to a certain target. Instead, it's really there to help focus your efforts. And let me give you a quick example. One of our clients had been the Coravin wine system. So for those of you who do not know what Coravin is, this is a wine system that allows you to access the wine without popping the cork. And when we were helping them at the very, very beginning of launching their product, and just for reference, they are now actually a global company, we started by refining our audience and making sure that our initial target was the wine collector. And our rationale behind that was that we needed to make sure that as we were putting a roughly $200 product out on the market, that those people who would be impacting the decision of our later larger target of the wine enthusiasts, which we then spoke to in year 2 and onwards, that we had first spoke to that wine collector. So if you look at it almost in terms of a bullet or a dartboard, you may first focus on one type of consumer and then start broadening it out into other areas as you make sure that you hit that first target. So your initial target market should not confine you, but rather instead focus your efforts, especially in the beginning, as a startup where you're really watching your dollars. Now, I wanted to share with you today also just a quick framework to help you capture, who your target is, and to make sure that you had something whereby you could potentially put all those different elements together on one slide, because it is so helpful to have that kind of in your back pocket as you're starting to think about further developing the product or idea, putting together a marketing plan, thinking about where you're going to place your marketing dollars, just to have a quick reference. So I'm going to take you through those different elements. This is just an example of something that we had used actually several years ago for one of our clients. Let me take you through an example. So in this one pager, you would capture often information that you may have in many different sources, and you can adapt the visual as needed for whatever works, again, for you. But it should capture this information. On the upper left-hand corner, I have key influencers. So who influences your target's purchase decision, and where do they go for information? On habits and practices, what are their habits and practices when using your product or experiencing it? What are their occasions for use? Of course, we're going to try to capture demographics and life stage, those basics, but then also rounding it out with leisure interests and passions of understanding what motivates them. And again, you can go also into other related areas because it will help us get a more well-rounded perspective. Their needs and desires. So what are their needs and desires? Often also focus on relative to the category. and values and attitudes. Again, relative to the category, how do they see that? I also often like to have a couple of visuals that bring not necessarily purely the target to life, but capture aspects of that target. So that as you're, for example, speaking to your creatives or trying to convey your thought as to who your target consumer is, that can be brought to life just a little bit more. Now, some of you may say, gee, you know what? I don't have any of that information. How can I start building that draft consumer profile? Well, here are a couple of tips. One, you could ask them. Nowadays, there are many ways that you can conduct an online survey to just get even some basic insights. You can also conduct a roundtable and invite them. Thirdly, you can take advantage of an existing meetup or schedule one to talk to who you think your target consumer is to get further insights. And while some of you may be hesitant to do some of that primary research, you can also consider observing them. So you could, for example, look at how they shop potentially in store. And I know that's difficult now during COVID times, but as a second option, you can also check out consumer reviews to see how they describe the category or their overall shopping experience, or go to a site like Reddit to see what they're talking about relative to your product, if it's already out there, or again, that overall just category. Thirdly, checking with the competition. So you could attend an expo or another type of exhibition and see how the competition is speaking to the target and see how you might be a little bit different. Or looking at where the competition is placing ads and messaging to the target, and then backtrack it and figure out who that consumer is, or literally create a draft consumer profile for your competition, and then think about how you might be a little bit different. To bring the importance of understanding your consumer to life, I think often of a client with whom we had worked with a couple years ago. This is a smaller organic mint maker. Many of you may have actually experienced some of these mints. They came to us because they were trying to figure out why they were not getting a sales lift from their investment into social media. And they were not sure exactly what was driving that. And what we did was we figured out that, in fact, the brand lover was not who they thought it was. So they had initially been targeting vegan females. Now, how did they get to that idea? They got to that idea because it just happened that their creative agency happened to be more vegan females, and they liked the product and thought, of course, why don't we just target kind of ourselves? When in fact, the more motivated and attractive target was actually the conscientious family man. So that was kind of the active involved dad. And that was partially because, you know, this was a mint that you could feel good about. It reflected for them who they were and what they valued. They felt good about sharing this with some of their other friends, as well as sharing it with their kids. So we help them by adjusting their messaging and then also their overall media campaign. And that allowed them then to actually have a very immediate sales lift by actually spending much less. So it is so important to clearly understand your consumer so that you know what messaging is going to be relevant and resonate with them, and that you even know where to place that messaging. So if you're not sure now, having gone so far during our presentation, do I have a clear idea of who my consumer target is? Well, let's do a couple of quick checks. One, you could share your marketing assets with someone who has never heard you speak about your brand, and ask them to describe your target, and then ask them to describe what attracts the target to your brand. And if after hearing that, you have a very clear idea and it reflects who you believe your target is, and it is not the overall generic, you know, relative to, again, the cartoon that we mentioned at the very beginning, then you're going in the right direction. But if it's not, it may be time to, again, go back and really start refining who your target is, starting, first of all, by using that consumer profile template and start filling in what you know, and then start digging a little bit deeper. If you do need then further help, I will say that, you know, if you want to understand the who. So who is attracted to your idea and what they're all about. We as a team also help by exposing your idea to a much broader audience and then uncovering the commonalities of those attracted to your idea. So there are many ways that you can figure out exactly, again, who that consumer is. First of all, by trying to do it on your own and using some of the resources available, or tweaking, again, what you already have. Or again, we also offer those resources as needed. So without further ado, I had promised I would stick to my 20 minutes minimum, and I wanted to give absolutely everybody an opportunity to also ask any questions about what we just spoke about, or what my organization is about. I wanted to hand it over back to Branch Foods. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Annette, for that great presentation and great guidance on how to find a target customer. So at this time, if anyone has a question, you are welcome to send it through the group chat. We will receive it, the hosts, or you can unmute yourself and ask a question to Annette live. Annette, one of the questions that we did get through was, are you seeing any brands get particularly creative given that so much is happening online now with finding their target customer? And if so, what platforms are they using? How are they administering some of those surveys? Any unique kind of evolutions of identifying a target customer given the impact of COVID?
So that's a loaded question. In fact, that's a loaded couple of questions that you have there. So I'm going to try to answer at least a few of them. And please, hold my feet to the fire and remind me if I have not answered all of them. So one of the questions was, have I seen any creative ways of figuring out how to figure out, who your consumer target is, but then also going further, reaching out to them? Yes and no. I think that people are suddenly discovering the many different ways of, again, how to get information about their consumer target. And because we are now kind of all stuck within our home offices, we are turning even more so to our online capabilities, whether or not that's, again, researching our category, or figuring out through a survey or otherwise what other folks are thinking about that category or our certain product experience. I think people are just leveraging and uncovering those ways much more now, left to their own devices. And then secondly, in regards to how are they leveraging this even more, because now so many people are, let's face it, spending more time online than in store or otherwise. I think that is forcing people to be even more focused about how they are conveying their messaging by being very selective about where they are putting their messaging out there, because they want to make sure that as people are spending their time online, that they're seeing their messaging in an area that's very relatable to their actual brand. I think it's also shifting a lot of marketing dollars to more social media because, other areas where you used to find the spend, people aren't shopping there, at least for the near term right now. So you can't reach them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So another question that came in is around profitability of target market and I guess product market fit. So in pursuit of identifying your target market, do you identify the profitable target market and then adjust the product to fit that? Or do you lead with the product and then identify the profitable aspect of it? How would you start kind of thinking about that?
That's a great question because I will give you more of the reality check. Most of our clients come to us because they already have a certain idea and are thinking about many different venues where they might be able to put out their product, but don't know which one would be most profitable or most lucrative from them. So in those situations, we look at analyzing those potential different market areas and again, looking for where might this product address a need for their consumer, and then sizing it up from that side. There are other situations where a client comes to us and are looking for, they may have an existing product that's already out there and they're looking to extend into other areas or even doing some white space innovation. For those situations, we look at different areas, so different categories, and start looking at the overall larger, how big is that category? Is it growing, the competitiveness, etc. And then we start looking for gaps. So where are there need states where potentially our client might be able to fulfill a need? So it really depends on the situation of our client and how we approach it. But in the end, we have a mindset that it's always very much consumer need based. So that is a commonality in terms of when we're looking at sizing the overall market.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Karen Feinberg. Karen, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, hi. This is Karen. I'm talking to you from New Jersey, New York area, but was in Boston for many, many years and still connected in. And some of my work, I work across many different industries. And I've worked with many different stakeholders and audiences. And I also think a lot about equity, inclusion, diversity, and even before these times. And I'm from Minneapolis, by the way, so powerful place to be from currently. So my question is just thinking about, have you come upon, it's kind of a twofold question. Are people coming to you to help them think about diversifying their marketing strategies? Are you seeing in Reddits, are you seeing all over, people are really thinking about that? How can you get the clients thinking more deeply, I guess, about these issues when you're working with them, if that makes sense?
Yeah, Karen, thank you for that question. So just to give you a little bit of a bit more background as to kind of our focus area. So we focus more on the, we call it kind of the fuzzy front end of innovation. So we're way at the beginning. Where we start also, as we start thinking of different areas of where to innovate, we also look at what that macro environment is. And that is where we start pulling in influences of not just from obviously within the category, but bigger picture trends and directions. And, are we moving towards a more purpose-driven, more sustainable environment? That's where those aspects start coming in. And we start incorporating that then into when we start looking at how to create a new product often. So we are very much upstream where we try to think about what could the future hold, looking at where our society really is going and how can we, to use a sport analogy, shoot ahead of the puck, okay? So how can we be there and be ready so that we're taking into account the direction that we're already starting to see in terms of, yes, our society is looking to become more diverse, but also thinking deeper, how is what is going on right now, how might that impact how we value certain offerings and what's important to us, and how can I incorporate that into some of my new products? Because as I mentioned at the very beginning, it's not just often what the functionality is, it's also the emotional side.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for that question, Karen.
Thank you.
So we are at time. I want to reiterate our gratefulness to Annette for hosting this session with Branch Food. Thank you so much, Annette. Very helpful information as people consider how to constantly make sure, well, first identify and then consistently make sure that they're hitting their target market with regards to the products that they're launching and seeking to grow a successful business around. So thank you for your time. Thanks to all of you who tuned in. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your questions. We had so many come through, but please feel free to follow up with Annette at the details she provided here on the slide that's still projected. We look forward to hosting you in the future for our future Serving Up Support sessions, which can be found on our website at branchfood.com/servingupsupport. All upcoming and previous sessions are listed there, and you can watch previous sessions on our YouTube channel, which again are all linked through the watch buttons on that website. So thank you all for tuning in on this Friday. We hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be back again soon. Take care.